Have you ever noticed something strange happening to your mind? There was a time when ideas came easily. Thoughts flowed. Plans felt exciting. But now, sometimes you sit quietly and wonder, why does my mind feel slower? Not empty, not broken, just quieter than it used to be. If you're over 40, this feeling is more common than you think. But here's the real question most people never ask. What if the problem isn't that your mind is running out of ideas? What if something deeper has changed in the way you think? Today, let's explore something many people experience but rarely understand. Creative stagnation after 40. And by the end of this video, you might see your mind in a completely different way. Before we explore this idea further, let me invite you to reflect on something for a moment. Think back to a time earlier in your life, perhaps your 20s or 30s. Your mind was probably full of possibilities, ideas about work, ideas about life, plans you wanted to try. Sometimes thoughts would appear almost randomly. A new direction, a new project, a new way to change your life. But now, something may feel different. You might sit quietly with your thoughts and notice that the flow of ideas isn't the same. Maybe you open a notebook hoping something meaningful will come to mind. Or you stare at a blank page waiting for inspiration. And instead, there is just stillness. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever wondered why this happens? Why the mind that once produced endless ideas sometimes becomes so quiet later in life? Many people assume it means their creativity is fading. But what if that assumption is completely wrong? What if this change is actually a natural psychological shift that happens as we grow older and gain experience? To understand this better, we need to look at how the mind itself evolves over time. The mind becomes selective. One of the biggest mental changes after 40 is this. Your brain becomes far more selective about what it considers worth thinking about. When we are younger, our mind generates ideas constantly. Why? Because life is still wide open. Every possibility feels realistic. A new career, a new country, a new identity. Your brain keeps producing ideas because it believes many of them are still possible. But after decades of experience, something changes. Your mind has seen more reality. It has learned what works and what doesn't. So your brain begins filtering ideas before they even appear. Instead of producing 10 ideas, it might allow only one. And sometimes, none at all. Let me ask you something interesting. Have you ever noticed that younger people seem full of ideas, but many of those ideas are unrealistic? Your mind now protects you from that. But the side effect is this. Creativity can start to feel slower. Not because your mind is weaker, but because it has become more intelligent about where it spends its energy. Experience can quiet curiosity. There is another psychological factor many people overlook. Experience can slowly replace curiosity. Think about this. When we are young, the world feels mysterious. Everything is new. Every situation raises questions. But after 40 years of living, many patterns become familiar. You have seen certain types of people before, certain arguments before, certain disappointments before. And slowly, your mind begins predicting outcomes. This prediction ability is useful, but it also creates a hidden problem. When the brain believes it already knows the answer, it stops asking questions, and curiosity disappears. But creativity depends on curiosity. Let me ask you something personal. When was the last time you explored something completely new? A new subject, a new skill, a new way of thinking? Not because you had to, but because you were genuinely curious? Many people realize something surprising here. It's not that their creativity disappeared. It's that their curiosity slowly faded. Mental overload blocks creativity. Now here is the third insight, and it might be the most important one. By the time people reach 40, their mind is carrying a lot more weight. Responsibilities, work pressure, family concerns, financial decisions, regret about past choices, worry about the future. All of these thoughts compete for attention, and creativity needs something very specific to survive: mental space. But when the mind is constantly busy managing life, there is very little space left for imagination. Let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you allowed your mind to simply wander? No phone, no stress, no urgent tasks, just thinking freely. Many people over 40 realize something uncomfortable here. They are not lacking ideas. They are lacking quiet mental space. And without space, ideas struggle to appear. Let's pause for a moment. Think about your own mind recently. Not 5 years ago, not 10 years ago, but now. Ask yourself 3 simple questions. First, do you feel your mind has become more selective about what it thinks about? Second, has your curiosity about new things slowly decreased over time? And third, is your mind constantly busy solving problems instead of exploring ideas? If any of these feel familiar, then what you are experiencing is not unusual. It's something many people face quietly in midlife. But understanding it changes everything. Because once you understand why creativity slows down, you can start reconnecting with it again. Here is the deeper truth many people discover after 40. Creativity does not disappear with age. It changes form. When we are young, creativity is loud. It jumps from idea to idea. It is chaotic. But later in life, creativity becomes quieter, more reflective, more thoughtful. Instead of producing hundreds of random ideas, your mind starts searching for ideas that actually matter. Ideas connected to meaning, purpose, truth. This is why many great thinkers, writers, and philosophers produce their deepest work later in life. Not because they suddenly became smarter, but because their mind finally understood what was worth thinking about. So if your mind feels quieter today, maybe it's not a sign of decline. Maybe it's a sign that your thinking is becoming more intentional. Let me leave you with one final question. The next time your mind feels quiet, instead of asking yourself, why don't ideas come to me anymore? Try asking something deeper. Ask yourself, what kind of thoughts is my mind becoming more careful about? Because sometimes what feels like a lack of ideas is actually a shift in awareness. Your mind is no longer interested in every passing thought. It begins searching for something more meaningful, something more real. And sometimes, what feels like silence inside your mind is simply the space where more important thoughts are slowly forming. So the real question might not be, where did my ideas go? The real question might be, what kind of ideas is my mind preparing for now?